Hello, and welcome to the Life Academy. I'm Pastor Brad Rogers, welcoming you back to our series on the biblical Rocky, which focuses on one of the most interesting individuals found in the pages of the New Testament, a follower of Jesus with the given name Simon. The name Simon was a common name for a Jewish man in the first century. In the biographies of the life of Jesus, as well as in the book of Acts, it appears often. It was so common that of his closest friends, Jesus had two disciples named Simon. For clarity, one was referred to as Simon the Zealot, so named because of his affiliation with a revolutionary political group that was fiercely opposed to Roman rule. The other Simon was the impetuous fisherman who often spoke before thinking, sometimes putting his foot in his mouth in the process. And despite these character traits, Jesus recognized and called forth Simon's natural leadership gifts and gave him the new name, Peter, meaning rock in the original language of the New Testament. For our purposes in this series, we have been playfully and affectionately referring to Simon Peter as Rocky, drawing a parallel to the iconic film series written and produced by Sylvester Stallone about the boxer Rocky Balboa, who overcame adversity and challenges and rose to great acclaim. In the biblical Rocky, my colleagues and I are exploring some of the pivotal moments in Rocky's climb. In the previous episode, Pastor Doug Pratt brought to life that moment when Jesus invited the fisherman by trade to become a fisher of men by calling. In so doing, Jesus offered Rocky a life of significance and purpose. He was to tend to the most precious resource any of us has, the eternal human soul. Because of this calling and his affiliation with the most important figure in all of human history, Jesus of Nazareth, 2,000 years after the life of Rocky, his legacy still stands. The biblical Rocky serves as an inspiration to all those who seek to follow Jesus in both triumph and failure. In this episode, we are going to explore another formative event in Rocky's life, a time when he courageously asked to do something he knew intellectually was impossible, and yet Jesus responded to him with an invitation. Come, let's explore together. By the time we catch back up with him, Rocky had already been following Jesus for a while. With his own two eyes, he had witnessed Jesus perform incredible miracles, demonstrated unparalleled power over the natural world. Rocky had sat under Jesus' teaching, both in massive crowds and in more intimate settings alongside the other 11 disciples who called Jesus Rabbi. Immediately before the event we are exploring in this episode, Jesus had caused quite a stir. On account of the miracles and his profound teaching, he had amassed such a following that thousands of people were hanging on his every word. Jesus taught this crowd all day long. Perhaps because they heard some stomachs grumbling, the disciples rightly assessed that the people were getting hungry, but they also knew they didn't have enough food to feed him. So, with a small boy's offering of just 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, Jesus fed 5,000 men, not to mention women and children who were not included in the count. With the buzz of this miracle still lingering among the crowd, exhausted after a long day of teaching and intending to head off by himself to pray, Jesus instructed his disciples to take their boat across the waters Rocky had fished for years and undoubtedly knew like the back of his hand, the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee serves as the backdrop for some of Rocky's most profound encounters with Jesus. Along its shores, Rocky received his call to ministry, which we explored in the previous episode. In its waters, Jesus performed 2 miracles which provided Rocky with a huge haul of fish. And after Rocky had denied knowing Jesus 3 times, it was along the shores of the sea that Jesus lovingly reinstated him. Time and time again, the Sea of Galilee set the stage for pivotal moments in Rocky's journey of faith. The large freshwater lake served as a lifeline to the ancient world. It provided drinking water, sustained a thriving fishing industry, nourished fertile lands for agriculture, and facilitated transportation and trade. Yet this life-giving source was also tumultuous and temperamental. Due to its unique geography, it was prone to sudden and violent storms, sitting about 680 feet below sea level, making it the lowest freshwater lake in the world. It is flanked by the Galilean Hills to the west and the Golan Heights to the east. Cool air rushing down from the hills collides with the warm air above the lake, stirring up powerful winds and large waves without warning. As a seasoned fisherman, Rocky knew this all too well. He and the other disciples had already faced such storms together. Once, while crossing the lake, a fierce squall arose, threatening to capsize their boat. Meanwhile, Jesus slept peacefully in the stern. Trembling with fear, the disciples woke him, and with a word, Jesus stilled the storm raging on the sea and the storm raging in his disciples' very souls. Stunned that even the wind and waves obeyed him, they wondered aloud to one another, "Who is this guy?" No, Rocky and the disciples were no strangers to the sea's dangers, and once again they navigated its unpredictable waters. They pushed away from shore and headed out to sea, but this time, the one who had once calmed the storm was not with them. Again, as often was the case on the Sea of Galilee, the wind picked up without warning and drove them away from the shoreline. In the howling gusts, the simple sail of their skiff became useless. If they were going to make it safely back to shore, they would have to row with all their strength. They pulled at the oars, but like someone running on a treadmill that you might see at a local gym, despite their best efforts, they made no progress against the headwinds. For hours, Rocky and the disciples fought against the relentless storm and merciless sea. The wind and rain reduced visibility to nearly nothing. They probably couldn't even see land. Stroke after stroke with no forward movement also may have caused them to lose any sight of hope. Then, at about 3 a.m, just before the first light of dawn, something impossible happened. Through the wind, rain, and sea spray, a figure appeared, barely visible at first. The figure moved steadily toward them, stepping effortlessly across the waves. The disciples couldn't believe their eyes. They were miles from land. How could this be? As the figure approached, their hearts pounded. There was only one explanation they could fathom. This must be an apparition, a ghost. Sensing their fear, Jesus called out over the violent storm, "Take courage, it is I." This moment is recorded in the first 2 biographies of Jesus' life in the New Testament. And in the original language, in both accounts, Jesus literally says, "Take courage, I am." His choice of words may have carried a deeper, more profound significance than we first understand, something his original audience would have immediately recognized. The name I am was the sacred name of God throughout the Old Testament. It was God's revealed self-designation. So when Jesus stood amidst the raging storm and declared, "Take courage, I am," he was not merely offering reassurance, he was revealing his true identity. Earlier, in the throes of another storm that Jesus stilled with just a single word, the disciples had marveled, "Who is this guy?" And now again, on the open sea, wrestling yet another squall, Jesus gave them the answer, "I am." In reply to Jesus' declaration, Rocky pipes up. He had a tendency, like many of us, to speak before thinking through the implications of his words. Courageously, but rashly, he bellowed over the thunder and choppy surf, "Jesus, if it really is you, tell me to come to you on the water." He was no stranger to the sea, so he had to have known better. He undoubtedly knew that what he was asking Jesus to do was impossible for a human being. People don't walk on water. Yet despite what he knew rationally was impossible, there Jesus was in front of him walking on water. Could it be that Jesus had the power to extend this power to him? Even more shocking was Jesus' response. To the most impossible of requests, Jesus uttered just one word, "Come." The breakneck pace that the gospel reports this event seems to leave little time for doubt to enter Rocky's mind. He quickly swung one leg over the freeboard, then the other. Dangling his legs over the undulating sea, he shifted his weight over his feet and stood up. Cautiously, he began to walk to Jesus along the surface of the water. As the winds continued to whistle and the waves licked his feet and legs, Rocky's eyes were diverted from Jesus, and he began to recall the danger that surrounded him. And the fear and the panic and the doubt crept back in, and gravity took back over, and Rocky sank, well, like a rock. Almost instinctively, he called out, "Lord, save me." Jesus, now close enough to be within reach, stretched out his hand and grabbed a hold of him. It's impossible to know the exact tone that Jesus used when he spoke the words that came next, but as Jesus lifted Rocky out of the chaotic waters, he said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" With Rocky safely in his clutch, they boarded the ship together, which was undoubtedly waterlogged, and the storm was stilled. With Jesus back in the boat, there was no longer anything to fear, and the disciples had the answer to their question. Who is this guy? They announced their conclusion with their own words. Truly you are the Son of God. There's a tendency to interpret Jesus' words as chiding Rocky for doubting, as though if his faith were stronger, he would not have sunk like a rock. However, this pivotal moment in Rocky's life reminds us of a stunning truth. When the waves and breakers of fear and doubt sweep over us and threaten to overtake us, we are not beyond the reach of our Lord. Even there, Jesus is not too far from us. We, like Rocky, can reach up and call out, "Lord, save me," even through our doubts. Jesus is mighty to save. After 2,000 years, this episode in Rocky's life story is still told, not as a tale of failure, but as a pivotal moment in his journey, when he discovered Jesus as his ever-present refuge and strength, even in the face of doubt. And so he is for you and for me. Through our greatest trials and challenges, in moments of courageous faith and sinking doubt, Jesus remains our only refuge and strength. It is precisely in the midst of the storms of life that the true character and power of the great I Am are most fully revealed. So no matter what storm you're facing today, remember that even if you cannot see him through the storm and cannot imagine how he could come to you on the choppy sea, Jesus is never far from you. Whether you have great faith or sinking doubt, you can call out to him, "Lord, save me." And with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, he will take you into his arms where you will find refuge and strength. Well, that does it for this episode of the Biblical Rocky. Tune in next time when my colleague Carson Brown shares with us another time when Rocky gave the right answer, and shortly thereafter, he was rebuked. See you next time on the Life Academy.